take action. We want to work with our Muslim brothers and sisters in a cooperative, collaborative initiative to strengthen and deepen peace in our community and the world. In summary, we're here to answer the question, what can we do alone and together to reduce the fear in our world?
I'm June Isley, and I'm chair of the Peace Education Action Group of Movement for a Culture of Peace. Thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see so many people here. And I'm going to move right on by introducing the panel. After I introduce you, then I get you to come up and sit here. Saad Khan is a first-year MD, PhD student at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in the Bronx. He graduated from NYU in 2014, where he was actively involved in many religious and interfaith clubs. He served as the president of the Bridges, which is a Muslim-Jewish interfaith group at NYU, and was the vice president of the Muslim Students Association. Saad, would you like to come up here, please? Timmie Mirza works as a senior accountant at the University of Delaware. She graduated magna cum laude from Goldie Beacon College with Bachelor of Science degrees in accounting and computer information systems. She earned her certified public accountant designation in 2007. She lives in Newark, Delaware with her husband and 2 sons. She also volunteers at the Islamic Society of Delaware as a Sunday school teacher. Timmie, come on up. Rumi Khan is a junior at the Newark Charter School. In 2012, he was the youngest person at age 12 to develop an iPhone application called Red Square. Last October, he presented a paper, The Impact of Nationalism on Interfaith Relations in Southeast Asia, at a conference in the Philippines. Rumi is the president of the Technology Society at Newark Charter School. Muqtedar Khan is associate professor at the University of Delaware and a co-founder of the Delaware Council on Global and Muslim Affairs. And we'll start off on this end and come up here to make your presentation.
Start by thanking you all for hosting us and having us here. I think this is the type of dialogue that's exactly the thing we need to do in order to combat discrimination of all forms, including Islamophobia. So I have 10 minutes to speak, so I'm going to try to focus on just a few things. And if there's one thing that I really want to convey in my presentation, it's just this simple idea that I want you to see me, see us, see Muslims in general as just normal people. That we're not anything fancy or different or weird, but that we're just human beings just like you. And that's really what I want to convey. There's this idea that of what Islam is. That we're told in the media, we're told by other people of what Islam is and what Islam believes. And Islam is not a monolith. Islam is not something that is just, a single structure and this is what it says and all Muslims are the same in this regard. But Islam is a very diverse religion, encompassing over 1 billion people around the world. There's over 3 million Muslims in America alone. It's a religion that's existed for hundreds of years. It spans many countries, many cultures. People of all skin colors, people of all backgrounds practice Islam in many different ways. Each person's experience with this religion is different, and it impacts everyone in a different way. So my narrative of what it was like for me growing up in Delaware as a Muslim is different from what it might be for someone else growing up as a Muslim in Delaware. But one thing we all have in common is that we're just normal people who just want to live our lives, right? We're predominantly peaceful. We just, we go to work, we go to school every day, we go home, just like you. Difference is we pray in a different way. We pray 5 times a day. So for me, growing up, going to school in Delaware, during lunch break, I go and pray somewhere in one of the teacher's rooms or something, pray for 5 minutes, and then I come back. On Fridays, instead of Sundays, we have our prayer services. So we go to the masjid, we go to the mosque, we go and listen to the imam speak, and he gives a sermon which is very much like the sermons that you're used to. That we need to be good people, we need to be compassionate, and so on. And we have a lot more in common than you might think. We believe in all the prophets that you believe in. We believe in Moses and Abraham and Jesus and so on. We respect the Bible as a book of God. We have a lot of the same principles in common. My parents came here many years ago. They immigrated for opportunity, for a job. And growing up here, my experience was that I found this country to be a very nice place. People didn't see me as a stereotype, as some sort of, whatever people might think a Muslim is, but people just saw me as a person. No one really judged me for who I am as a Muslim. No one really, sometimes people give you weird looks when you're praying in the corner somewhere. Sometimes people are curious when they realize that you don't drink alcohol or you don't do certain things. But for the most part, I found people to be welcoming and compassionate, right? And that's really what we should strive to be. Because the people who are most susceptible to things like Islamophobia, to these sorts of arguments that politicians make in order to rile up people, get people excited, these things affect the people who are most vulnerable in our society. They affect the people who, maybe in New York, someone who owns a grocery store, and they become the victims of vandalization. This happens a lot. It affects women. It affects people like my mom, my sister, who have to go to school, who have to go to work every day, who have to go out wearing a hijab, and they're clearly and visibly Muslim, and they're subject to harassment, people making fun of them, people calling them names. This causes, people to be scared, for us to be scared, It's the little Muslim communities all over the country where there's a lot of masjids that have been burned down due to vandalization. I went to Little Rock, Arkansas for a community service trip once. And we went to a masjid, a mosque that had been burned down, and we saw what remained of it. That someone had, in the middle of the night, vandalized it and forced it to the ground. Imagine that. Right? These are the consequences of the kinds of things that these politicians and media and whatever, these ideas that we have about Islam being this other thing, this weird thing that we need to be afraid of, these are the consequences. It affects people. Right? There's a lot of people in this country who are nice, who are compassionate, who are understanding. And that's for the most part what I've experienced, what I've met. But there's a lot of people who are not like that. And there's a lot of people who suffer as a result of those types of dialogues and things. Right? There's this idea that, we have a narrative. Right? Every Muslim has their own narrative. And when you allow the things that people say on TV, when you allow the things that people say in the media and so on to decide what Islam is, that other people are saying, people who aren't Muslims are saying, this is what Muslims believe. Someone else is telling me what I believe, right? This is really the issue with Islamophobia, is that it takes away my ability to say what I believe. I can't say that Islam is peaceful, that it's just like normal, Islam is about worshiping God and having a spiritual connection. I can't say that if I'm saying that I'm being politically correct, right? I'm not being honest, somehow I'm hiding something, right? This is the kind of environment that it fosters, right? It takes away my ability to say what my narrative about Islam is. What happens, hundreds of miles away, what happens to all these groups that do all these crazy things, that doesn't speak for what I am as a Muslim. That doesn't speak for what the community in Delaware is as Muslims, for what all the Muslims in America are. Like, that's not what we are, right? And if we want to deal with that, it has to start with things like this, where we're having a dialogue. We have to be willing to just see each other as normal people and just communicate on that basis. I was part of a club at NYU which was about Jewish-Muslim interfaith. And it was amazing the kind of things that we could do when we just got people from different religions together to sit down and just talk. Right? We learned so much about each other. We did community service things. We did all these projects. We were able to accomplish a lot of things when we worked together. Right? And then later on, we also formed a Muslim-Christian interfaith club. We did similar things. We sat down. We had Bible, Quran readings. We had discussions. We learned about each other. And when we do more things like that, we can solve a lot of the problems that we face. We can make our country safer when we work together to solve problems. We can make our community safer when we work together to deal with these problems and foster a spirit of trust. So really, that's all I want to kind of convey to you. And I think the Q&A session, I look forward to that, so we can have more of a back and forth discussion about things that are on your mind. But really, that's just what I wanted to emphasize, that we're just normal people. I grew up here, I've been here, we've been here for years. We've just been living peacefully. We don't mean anything weird, we're just normal. So thank you for having us.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I begin with the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon all of you. My name is Timmie Mirza, and I'm a CPA. I work for University of Delaware, and my job is to streamline existing processes and automate things to make life easier for people. I would like to thank all of you for taking the time to be here. It's truly a privilege for me to be here speaking in front of all of you. I came across a post on Facebook recently which said, you don't need religion to have morals. If you can't determine right from wrong, then you lack empathy, not religion. First, I will share my experience as a Muslim woman living and working in the U.S. Then I will talk about how I became a practicing Muslim, and with that, what I bring to the table. And lastly, I'll talk about things that you can do to help me and people like me to succeed in America. I started working for University of Delaware about 11 months ago. It was only recently that I decided to wear my headscarf. It's called a hijab. It's spelled as H-I-J-A-B. I had been wearing the hijab for more than a year on weekends and to most Muslim gatherings. And I really enjoyed wearing it. It took me a while to convince my husband that it was a good idea for me to start wearing it all the time. Over Thanksgiving break, I decided that this was something I strongly felt about, and I decided to stop wearing it to work. My friends and colleagues at work certainly noticed the difference, but they didn't say anything. They were being very respectful. Unfortunately, later that week, the shootings at San Bernardino happened. One day during a department meeting, I decided to address the elephant in the room, and I talked about my hijab. I talked about why this change happened in me, and I talked about what they could expect. I came to learn that a lot of my colleagues actually admired my new look, and men were actually being more respectful towards me. The men at my work are very courteous. They always hold the door open for women. After I started wearing my hijab, I noticed that that in addition to actually holding the door open for me, they started giving me more personal space. When I heard about the attacks on women wearing hijabs in America, trust me, the thought crossed my mind that I should defer my decision to start wearing it at this time, but I stuck with it. I truly feel blessed that I'm surrounded by some very supportive people. Now I want to talk about how I became a practicing Muslim. I was born and raised in Pakistan. I moved here when I was 18 years of age. I came here to go to college. I would describe my upbringing as moderately religious. In my household growing up, a lot of emphasis was placed on good morals and ethics and serving others, and less on the actual religious rituals. I did learn how to read the Quran, which is our holy book. It's in Arabic. I learned how to pray. I learned a few supplications, but mostly without learning the translation and learning the meaning of it. We would fast in Ramadan. We would pray on Fridays and on holidays, but we didn't used to pray regularly 5 times a day. We were so focused on our day-to-day lives, and that's how we rationalized not praying regularly. When I came to the US in 2001 to go to college, I got to meet people from probably every country and probably from every faith. I met a shy, kind-hearted young man who soon became my husband. The focus of my life became getting good education. My husband did a great job in getting me assimilated in the US. After graduating, I started working for a CPA firm in 2005, and I later became a CPA. I was very ambitious. I wanted to move up, get ahead. And then in 2008, we were blessed with a baby boy, and 20 months later with another one. So my everyday life just literally became a juggling act. I love my husband, I love my children, but I love working too. And we got so busy with our lives that we stopped thinking about God. Remembering God actually became something that we only did in the background. And we stopped performing most religious rituals. But during that time, we weren't thinking that God has a way of letting us know that He exists, because we make all kinds of plans, but He's the best of planners. With 2 young kids and a demanding job, life for me became very hard to manage. My husband and I found ourselves arguing regularly, and I felt that my bond with my kids was getting weaker, and I felt that my marriage was falling apart. I remember one day on my birthday, I was sitting in my kitchen with my mom, and she asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I said peace. A few years before this happened, my mom had become very religious, and she started to convince me that I should stop worrying about the worldly things and I should focus only on praying. Nearly every conversation I had with my mom ended up becoming a conversation about the religion, and it always ended in an argument, because I felt that my mom was in a totally different stage in her life where she didn't have to worry about little kids and diapers and bottles, so it was easier for her to say that I should drop everything and start praying. That day when I cried on my birthday wanting to find peace, inevitably she told me I should start praying. And guess what? I didn't listen. A few more months went by and things kept getting worse. And I started to not sleep well at night. During that time, my mother-in-law was also very ill. One day I came home from work and I was really down. I started crying. I cried for a while, and then I decided to pull out a prayer rug and I started praying. I felt calm. I went to bed that night and I slept. Next day after work, I did the same thing and I felt the same way. And I tried that for a few more nights, and same thing happened, and all of a sudden I started to sleep better at night. I started listening to different experts and scholars. I became very curious. Then I decided to start reading the Quran with translation. I'm only about 20% done, and it has transformed me completely. I'm a completely different person. Money, popularity, and prestige do not matter anymore. I have understood that God has made me for a much bigger and better purpose, and the purpose is to serve Him, and serve Him in every aspect of my life. I'm more mindful, more compassionate, honest, and caring, and these are some of the characteristics I see in many of the practicing Muslims around me. Let me give you a few examples. At work, you don't call out sick unless you're actually sick. When you become a practicing Muslim, that's what happens. When you're getting paid for 8 hours a day, you make sure that you work at least 8 hours a day. If a coworker is overburdened by an upcoming deadline, you lend a hand. At home, if your neighbor is going through some issues, you don't just stand around and watch. You jump in and you help out. It teaches you to live an authentic life where you have congruence between your beliefs and your actions. You say what you mean and you do what you say. Now I want to share a few things that perhaps you guys can do to help me and people like me to succeed in America. These are actually the things that I've experienced firsthand, and they make a big difference in my well-being and in me in feeling rooted in America. First thing would be to be flexible. Allow your employees time for Friday and daily prayers. At my work, we don't schedule any meetings between 12 and 2 on Fridays that require my attendance. Allow time off for holidays, because it is a big deal for Muslims, and having a guilt-free day off is priceless. Be accommodating. Provide private or semi-private spaces for praying at work. My boss actually got me a privacy screen for my cubicle so that I can just stay at work and pray in my cubicle instead of going outside to the car in the cold. And lastly, be supportive. Talk to Muslims. Ask them about their values and their beliefs. You may learn that you actually have a lot in common with them. To conclude my discussion, I want to mention that my experience may not be a typical experience of a Muslim in America right now, but I did want to point out all the things that are working well and how we can incorporate more of these into our societies. I would like all of us to show empathy towards each other, and we really don't need a religion to teach us that. If a woman shows up in a hijab at work, please ask her what it means to her. You may learn that it makes her feel secure. It may be her way of showing devotion to her Creator. Your acceptance may mean the world to her. Your support will help her in feeling integrated in America. I would like to thank you all for your time and your attention. And I also want to thank all the volunteers, and especially Dr. Khan. May God give you the best reward for your efforts. And I would like to get to know all of you at a personal level, and I would like to keep this dialogue going. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Hello. My name is Saad Khan, and today, first I'd like to thank the Movement for Cultural Peace and the Delaware Council for allowing me to speak here.
You need to move the mic a little bit.
Thanks, Ellen. All right, how does it sound? Oh, that's a lot better, isn't it? Yeah, I'm a little short, so. All right, so perhaps the greatest reason why we have such a proliferation of Islamophobia in the U.S. today is the constant bombardment of the knowledge of the terrible attacks perpetrated by renegade groups such as Al-Qaeda and ISIS. It's very easy to regard Islam as a civilization that is inherently barbarous or anti-modern. Yet, if you take a look back at history, that kind of narrative falls apart. So, at least in the West, the fall of the Roman Empire is considered a dark age in Western science because a great deal of intellectual learning kind of collapsed. And many say that with the fall of Rome, the torch of Western civilization was snuffed out, at least for the time being. But that statement is inaccurate because by the 800s to the 1200s, there was a golden age that carried the torch of Western civilization. And that's the Islamic golden age, something we don't really talk about a lot. This was a golden age of learning, philosophy, knowledge, and science throughout North Africa, Persia, and the Levant, which was fueled by the discovery of ancient Greek philosophy. So the golden age of Islam saw birth to new advancements, and I can just list a few of them off because they probably sound familiar. 3-course meals, the very first university, surgical tools, torpedoes, the foundations for chemistry and trigonometry, the camera obscura, the scientific method, and perhaps even the first manned flight were all developed or experimented during this era. But I'm going to talk about a couple of these examples just to show you that I'm not making this up. So, one of the most important philosophers during the produced by the Islamic civilization, his name is Ibn Khaldun, who analyzed historiography and sociology. So, historiography is the study of how we study history, and one of his most famous theories is this theory that civilization is inherently cyclical. For example, civilization starts with nomadic barbarians conquer a settled village or town. Then they slowly civilize, and they grow more, they lose their nomadic ways, they develop civilization, they reach a cultural apex, and then begin to fall, and another barbarian soon takes their place. And these are the kind of theories of history that we still apply when we look at all sorts of civilizations. Another important scientist, his name is Umar Khayyam, who is a Persian, an important mathematician, who set the foundations for modern mathematics. Now, you probably know what algebra is, but have you ever really thought to mean, like, what does the word algebra mean? It's algebra. It comes from an Arabic word, because algebra was first developed by the Arabs. So that's a very important tool in modern mathematics, but it was still never directly connected to geometry, which was what the Chinese and Greek scientists used. But Omar Khayyam developed a method which could solve cubic equations by inserting a hyperbola into a circle. This was a big deal because it connected geometry and algebra into one kind of mathematical system. So another man, his name is Ibn Haytham, and he's very popular in the West, at least during the time period. He was known as the physicist or the second Ptolemy in European legend. And that's because he had quite a lot of ideas, but I'll talk about a couple of them. For example, he is credited as the father of the scientific method, in that he proposed that we test testable theories or hypotheses through experimentation, which is the scientific method. He also wrote a very important book on optics, dealing with perpendicular rays and whatnot, but I won't get into that. And the last person I'll talk about today, his name is Ibn Sina, or Avicenna in the West. And he was born in Bukhara. Now, Ibn Sina is very important because he published a book called The Canon of Medicine. This was a medical encyclopedia published in the 1000s, and it was used until the 1650s in Europe because it was so fundamental in the knowledge that he collected in the book that they still use the surgical processes until late into the 1600s. But all that's great, but these are just a bunch of people. So what does it say for the whole civilization? Well, the Islamic Golden Age was entirely endorsed by the Caliphate, which was the government that ran the old Islamic empires. One of the very first caliphs, Harun al-Rashid, built the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. Now, the House of Wisdom was basically a building where he organized all of the old Greek or Indian texts he found, had them translated to Arabic, and invited the best scholars, best intellectuals in the whole land to analyze and build upon. This is a place where you could meet a scholar from Spain, Mali, Bukhara, or even India, all in the same room, which is pretty impressive for the 800s. So this wealth of knowledge is where we get the Islamic Golden Age. But it's hard to generalize about the Golden Age. It just lasted 5 centuries, and so many innovations were made that are key to modern European civilization. Since by the time the Renaissance happened, they just took off from when the Muslims left off. However, there are a couple things we can say about the Islamic Golden Age, in that its pioneers were what we call polymaths, or people like Leonardo da Vinci, who did many different things. I talked about how Avicenna published his Canon of Medicine, but he didn't just cover medicine, he covered philosophy and geology. So each of these individuals pursued what interested them purely out of scientific curiosity. Another big trend among these polymaths is that while they studied science, they were also theologians. And it might be a little strange for some of you to imagine why would world scientists also study religion, but it's important to understand that religion is just like science, another way that we can study and examine the world around us. So, Isaac Newton himself was a theologian first, mathematician second. So it's no real surprise there. So each of these polymaths each had their own school of thought or theories as to divinity or the Quran. So one of the biggest debates that rocked, of course, the Golden Age of Islam, which goes to show the nuance in philosophical development, is the debate between the two schools of thought, the Mu'tazilites and the Ash'aris. So the Mu'tazilites believed that all inherent truths of the universe, like what's good, what's evil, is the Quran created, is it not, can be derived entirely through rational thoughts. They weren't heretics, they were still Muslims, but they believed that rationality and logic were supreme. Of course, not everyone believed this. They were the Ash'aris who believed that while logic and reasoning is important, scripture should always trump our own mortal tools, and human truths are beyond understanding. And there are thousands and thousands of pages of literature you could read about how they debated all of these kind of philosophies, both religiously, but also in the sciences. So, this is all great and all, right? But what's the point I'm trying to make here? In essence, it's easy to look today and see the Middle East is backwards or barbarous, but it has a tradition of rationality, of science, of thought, of accepting, because many of the people involved in these debates had radically different viewpoints from the central government. Some were atheists, some were Jews and Christians. If the caliph was Ash'ari, he wouldn't go around murdering all the Mu'tazilites. And in many ways, it's kind of sad that today the Muslim world doesn't have this kind of philosophy, but it still exists. Just recently, the Nobel Prize winner for chemistry, a doctor named Dr. Aziz Sancar, shared with 2 others in chemistry. He is a Muslim, a Turkish American. And even today, Muslims are still producing scientists, doctors, computer programmers, and serving the military. They're still productive in society today. So my point is that it's very easy to paint Muslims as like barbarous, especially by what's happening in the Middle East right now. But there's still a tradition of science that many people haven't forgotten. And that's how I think we should fight Islamophobia today. Thanks.
I want to begin by reading 2 verses from the Quran. You can Google these verses. They are chapter 3, verses 113 and 114. So if you go to Google, just type Quran 3:113, 3:114, they will pop up. This is what the verses say. They are not alike, all the people of the book. Among them, there is a group that is an upright party. They recite the name of God and they worship Him and adore Him all night. They believe in God and the last day. They encourage people to do what is good and they forbid people from doing what is wrong. They strive with each other in encouraging everyone to do good, and they are people from among the good people. This is what the Quran is saying about people of the book, which means Christians and Jews. About 10 years ago, I would use this verse and half jokingly and half seriously say what the Quran is saying, that there are some good people of the book. And they are and I would contrast that from Europeans. Because Europe was Islamophobia, or Islamophobic. Europe was racist. Europe was anti-Semitic. It was not America. So I said, good people of the book were on this side of the Atlantic. But unfortunately, I'm now beginning to be, history is questioning that assessment. Just listening to Donald Trump, I feel alien to this country, to this culture. It feels like we're on a different planet altogether. And I find it quite bizarre, and I realize that this word Islamophobia is actually completely incorrect. Because nobody is afraid of Muslims. It's the Muslims here who are afraid of what's going on in this country. So it's the other way around, so we have to understand the context. But talking about good people of the book, I want to thank June for coordinating this. I want to thank the people who are part of the movement for peace and culture. We have worked on several projects before, and we will continue, inshallah, to work on projects together. So yes, there are a lot of good people in America and in the world. Events like this are itself a proof against what we are doing today. If we are here to lament Islamophobia, prejudice, contempt, anger, hatred of Muslims and Islam, then this event itself is an evidence against the case that we are making, because there are so many people who are coming out there to stand up with Muslims and say Islamophobia is something that should be completely rejected. Isn't that why you're here? Good. Just wanted to make sure that is why we are here. And it is that reason why that we decided to show you who Muslims of Delaware are. You saw young and younger and even younger Muslims of Delaware. We are pretty normal people, and that's the main point that we want to say. We think about this country the way you think. We think about life the way most people do. We think about God the way you all do, and if you don't, then you better start thinking about God the way we do. It's in your own good. I assure you of that. So that is the basic point that we were trying to make in this panel. I also want to read you a paragraph. Please bear with me. It will take about a minute. It's important for you to listen very carefully when I tell you what that paragraph is. Islamophobia is witnessing a spectacular growth in the American public sphere. It creates an environment that casts suspicion on all Muslims, demonizes their faith, and makes their lives difficult in small and big ways. There are increasingly incidents of discrimination while traveling, in the job market, and while re-entering the country after foreign trips. Every time Muslims try to construct a place of worship, it is being used as an opportunity for Islam bashing and to garner political capital at the expense of Muslims. Law enforcement agencies, even though they enjoy a great deal of cooperation from the community, continue to use religious profiling as a tool against Muslims. The systematic and steady erosion of Muslim civil rights is also a slow and systematic erosion of our own constitution and of our democracy. Dear members of the Senate Judiciary Committee on Constitution, as members of the United States Senate, you all have sworn to uphold and defend the US Constitution. The biggest threat to the Constitution today manifests as Islamophobia. Protect the Constitution by rejecting Islamophobia. This is the concluding paragraph of a testimony that I gave to US Senate Constitution Committee. But this was in 2011. So when I was preparing the talk, I just remembered, oh, I have already testified to the Senate on Islamophobia. Let me see what I said in 2011. This is before Trump. This is before Newt Gingrich ran for president. And I was horrified because I cannot write anything more powerful than what I wrote 5 years ago. And that is a scary part to me, that things have become worse than what they were 5 years ago. And all of these things are still valid. And that's why I thought it was important for me to rehash this past history to show that we have to be on a slippery slope going downhill as far as civil rights are concerned. There are many reasons why there is Islamophobia. And part of it is because not only of what is happening in the Muslim world, but also what is happening here. Events such as the Boston Marathon shooting, 9/11, San Bernardino event, etc., are not good advertisements for Islam or Muslims or for humanity as such. And they will generate fear, anger, etc. But that is not what the problem really is. In the last 20 years, toddlers have shot and killed more Americans than Muslims. Toddlers have shot more people. The chance that you will kill yourself is thousands of times more probability than you will be killed by an American Muslim. The probability of your committing suicide is much, much more higher than Muslims. There have been more than 355 mass shootings in 2003. Thousands of people literally have been killed by gun violence. So it's not just that we are afraid of violence. It's not just the fact that Muslims have killed less than 55 people in the last 15 years since 9/11. Even 55 is very bad, but that does not justify the extent of hatred and contempt for Islam and Muslims that we are witnessing today. Because what happened was it started in 2012, a little before that, where Islamophobia became a Republican Party's campaign strategy. You saw that in the election with all the focus on Ground Zero Mosque. Nobody cares about Ground Zero Mosque. Next time you're back, just check and send us a picture of what's going on there. No one knows. They shut it down. No one seems to care about what's happening with the Ground Zero Mosque today. But in 2011, it was the biggest issue. Youth unit was running on that. I remember answering a lot of media interviews. I wrote a lot about Islamophobia in 2012 and actually the Google it pop up. And my first answer to every reporter was, why didn't you call me in the first week of December and then we'll talk about the Ground Zero Mosque? Of course, no one has ever talked about the Ground Zero Mosque after November in 2012, once the election was done. So it started with this. But what it did was when Newt Gingrich and people like Congressman Wells in California, in Florida, and others started openly making anti-Muslim statements. Even Senator McCain came out and said that he thinks that America's president should be Christian. When they started making it, it became mainstream. So people spouting anti-Muslim statements were not free radicals, but they were mainstream leaders who were aspiring to become presidents of this country. So with the beginning of 2010, it became a political strategy. But now it's unbelievable. Now it's a competition. What is the GOP nomination is like, who hates Muslims most? That's what the contest has become. I hate Muslims most. No, I do. No, I do. Well, maybe a little less than Trump, but I do too. Everyone seems to be going out. There's this moment from the debate that just happened without Trump, in which Megyn Kelly basically is asking the question. They saw packages being unloaded, they saw Muslims, and they didn't call the police, they didn't do anything. So apparently if you see a Muslim in the package, you are supposed to call. That's why I was trying to hide my bag. You are supposed to call the police. I mean, what is this? What is interesting is that in this country, we are supposed to be stifled by political correctness. Isn't that one of the problems that some people have about our country, that we are too politically correct? If we are too politically correct, yet people are able to make such profoundly bigoted comments. Just replace the word Muslim with Jew or black and see how it sounds. You saw a Jew and you saw a bag and you didn't call the police? See? Is there anybody who would not construe that statement as anti-Semitic? But you can run for a presidential position in this country and raise money. The only time Ben Carson had a spike in fundraising over a period of time was when he said that Muslims should not be in the White House. So what has happened is that it has gone from beyond being a campaign strategy to something more profound. It has become a public policy. But I also think that Islamophobia is becoming a way to redefine America. Islamophobia is a strategy now to redefine America as a Christian country. Basically, the point is that if you're not a Christian, then you're not welcome. You're not an American. So those of you who don't subscribe to this idea that America should be a Christian nation are being taken for a ride by those who are using Islamophobia as a strategy fundamentally alienate and make it strange that is fundamentally American. Islam is not new to this country. You know, I say half jokingly that Obama is the second Muslim president of the United States. But if you read the Jefferson Bible, the only thing that he knocked off is things which are inconsistent with the Quran. The Jefferson Bible is completely in line with the Quran. Google Ben Franklin's creed. Ben Franklin was asked this question about religion in America, and he described his creed. It's unbelievable. He just described Islam. He described Jesus as the prophet, not as God. So very much like a Muslim would describe the importance of faith. If you go and read Madison, and if you read the Federalist Papers, there were lots of discussions. In fact, the founding fathers discussed the possibility of a Muslim getting elected to the White House. And they raised the question, should we ban Muslims from being president? And they decided no. That if people are going to elect somebody called Hussein to the White House, then they will. It's popular that he'll be president, or her be president. So Islam has been part of this country from the very beginning. There is a mural or a painting at the Supreme Court which talks about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as a lawgiver of this land. Americans were recognizing the contribution of Islam to the foundation of America long before Muslims became very visible. The first book with the title Islam in America was written in 1908 by an American called Alexander Webb. I found a copy of the Quran, which I started bidding on eBay, and after $6,000 I stopped. That was my life savings, I couldn't go beyond that. I later found out that somebody bought it and presented it to Sheikh Hamza Yusuf in California. It went off for like $100,000 or something. So why were Muslims bidding for this Quran? The reason why they were bidding is not for the whole copy. The front page of the copy said that this copy of the Quran is being printed in Massachusetts in 1773 because of the tremendous demand for Quran in America. There was so much demand that they had to commercially print Quran in the United States. So given these things, what I want you to understand is Islam is not an alien religion. Some of the most wonderful Americans are Muslims. Muhammad Ali, just name one. So what is happening then? Why is there so much Islamophobia? Islamophobia is not just fear of Islam and Muslims. It involves all negative values, such as hatred, such as contempt. It's a reflection of ignorance. It's a celebration of ignorance. We're living in a society which is becoming increasingly dumb. I find it fascinating that if you were to list 100 experts in any field, in every field, I think 60 to 70 are in America. In every field. And if you look legally and otherwise, there's no country on earth which is more free than America is. In terms of freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, America is still the freest country. In spite of the fact that we have the most experts on everything, despite the fact we have the biggest or the most profoundest freedom available in our public sphere, we have the dumbest discourse on earth. You know, when Bush, Steve, when you say dumb, you sort of think of Bush. When Bush and Gore were debating, I was reading the analysis and I found out that the level of discourse was 8th grade level. And I was so shocked. I said, I'm a big fan of America. I'm a big fan of American democracy. The first time I testified, I remember in the Congress, I said, Muslims just talk about this. Shura, Islam is consultation, consultative government. But in America, we do it routinely. And for me, it was a very proud moment that I was participating in the National Shura consultation. My government was consulting me to make public policy. But what was interesting to me was that in this country, the level of discourse at that time was 8th grade. Do you know what the level of discourse is in today's presidential campaign? Yeah. Trump is at 4th grade level, everybody else is at 5th grade level, really. This is not a joke. This is not a joke. Their level of discourse is at elementary school. They are not allowed to vote in this country. You at least have to be a senior, right, to be eligible to vote in this country, and our candidates are operating at the level of elementary school. So what does this all mean? What it means is this. By the grace of God, American Muslims are well established. They are reasonably well off. The level of education of American Muslims is much higher than that of average Americans. The per capita income of American Muslims is 1.5 times that. It's a small community, about maybe 3 to 4 million. We don't know really how many are children, how many are adults, how many are citizens, how many are not. We don't know all of that, but still, the community is reasonably safe. America's legal system is pretty robust. So Islamophobia is going to have constant unpleasant things going on. It's not going to create a crisis in the immediate future. But what it is going to do, and you must remember that, it will completely poison the country. See, if it becomes okay to discriminate against one community, culturally and legally, then it is okay to discriminate against anybody. So even if you don't care for Muslims, I think you should fight Islamophobia. Because it is a door we don't want to open. It is a door we don't want to open. I give the example of Islamophobia as a poisonous gas. You know, if you insert poisonous gas anywhere in this building, it's going to affect all of it. It's not going to pick and choose Muslims only. Well, at least today's technology, right? Maybe in the future people might discover weapons like that. I know some countries are trying to find out nuclear weapons which can ethnically target certain people and others. But at the moment we don't have the technology. There are 3 or 4 things that are happening. Number one, there are attempts to circumvent the Constitution itself by making Islamophobia legal. More than half the states in this country are trying to pass laws which are unconstitutional. And we saw that in the case of Tennessee, where even a referendum was found unconstitutional. That is a big danger when we are trying to legislate Islamophobia. As long as Islamophobia remains illegal, or prejudice and racism remains illegal, and we are prosecuting those who commit these acts, it's a cultural problem. But when it becomes legal to discriminate against people in a particular community, for example, Ted Cruz was suggesting that we bring in refugees from Syria, we should make sure that they are only Christian. Now that is legislating Islamophobia. We are making discriminatory laws which are against our own constitution. And if we do that, we might as well burn the constitution. The second thing that is happening is that Islamophobia has become a spectacle. It is a show. People are sometimes saying things not because they believe in it, but because they want it. I find it bizarre that people think that Muslims are going to impose the Islamic Sharia in the United States. Muslims are less than 1% of this country. Christians, who are nearly 70%, can't get 2 things passed: abortion and gay marriage, right? 2 elements of the Christian Sharia cannot be imposed in this country by 70% of the Christian population, partly because they don't agree, all of them, on this. Then how do you expect 1% of the population, which is Muslim, to impose 100% of the Sharia on the rest of the 99% of the American population? You don't have to be Umar Khayyam to do the math. Right? You can do it at 4th grade level. So that's one thing that you have to understand. That. So why are people doing this? Because it's a spectacle. They think that it makes them look acceptable to America if they are anti-Muslim, and that is the biggest fear. That being prejudicial and bigoted is okay. Not only that's okay, but it's a winning strategy. That is the biggest damage that we are doing to our country. And the third and most important thing that you need to understand is that America is not a nation state. We are the first and perhaps the most successful multicultural state. That means what binds us together is not our religious identity, or our ethnic identity, or our racial identity. The only thing that brings us together and makes an ummah out of us, makes a nation out of us, is our shared values. And the most important of that shared value is freedom of religion. And if you're going to compromise that for Muslims, you might as well throw the First Amendment out of the window. And that is the most important thing. So when I come in front of you and invite you and beg you and ask you to join me in my fight against Islamophobia in this country, what I'm merely saying is, I'm trying to save your country. Come join me in saving our country.
If anybody has a question written down on the card that we gave you at the beginning, pass it to the end of the aisle, and magically some of our people will be picking them up. If you ask a question, and you might want to say which panelist you want to answer it. If you don't get your question answered, after this is over, we're going into Klein Hall for refreshments and conversation with the panelists and everybody that was here. So you'll have more of a chance to talk on an individual basis. If anybody has a card, bring it up, please. Okay, I'm not going to be picky on these cards. I'm going to pick out whatever it says I'm going to ask. What is your opinion on Representative Carney voting against letting Syrian refugees in? And is this a reflection on Syrian refugees, a product of Islamophobia, or a different issue?
One step back before I comment on Carney's position on Syrian refugees. And that was the Iran nuclear deal. The Iran nuclear deal, the support for it, if you notice, Chris Coons became a national celebrity by delaying his decision coming. That's a good thing, that's a good strategy. I'm sure Brian is taking notes. How to build a national profile. He'll probably run for president soon. So, but anyway, what was interesting at that time, there were a lot of people in this state who were thinking there's one way of transforming the Middle East by making Iran our friend and not our enemy. Well, as you can see, it has proven to be a very good deal. But at that time, we expected Chris Coons to be the first to sign and Carney the last. And the reverse happened. That was quite surprising. I was so surprised that Carney came forward and signed it up, and Chris Coons deliberated it, etc. It was very difficult to understand. Both belonged to the same party, they are good friends, and so on and so forth. And one was, and it has something to do with their constituencies that they think they represent. So I feel that Carney is a little bit in the Hillary Clinton mode. He's a Democrat like Hillary Clinton. For example, if you remember the debate between Hillary Clinton and Obama on foreign policy about Iran issue. So Carney is like that. He's a little bit towards the center on foreign policy issues, and therefore his policy on Syria should be understood in that light. He's closer to Hillary than he is to Sanders. So that's why you understand it both. We have since had conversations with him. And if you notice, Governor Markle's position on the Syrian refugees was so spectacular, so noble, so wonderful. We just applauded that. And I think that has also rubbed off a little bit on Carney and his position subsequently has become much more different than that. And I think part of it is that if our representatives spend too much time in Washington, then they get influenced too much by the lobbyists who are there. So it's very important for his constituents here to continue to have a dialogue with our representative and tell them, I know the people you're having lunch with in Washington may want this, but let me tell you, I'm the one who works for you.
We have a lot of questions here now, so hope we'll answer as many as we can before we go into the Klein Hall, and then you can maybe ask them yourselves if yours isn't answered here. How do you explain this fear and hatred to your children and prevent them from developing fear and hatred back to the oppressors?
I mean, there's always been an element of, fear, hatred in societies throughout history. Right now it's Islamophobia, but before it was, racism against African Americans. And in the 50s it was, racism against Japanese people. Before that it was racism against Irish people. There's always these specters in our society. There's these specters that people raise up, teach us to be afraid of, to create a kind of scapegoat. So I guess what I would teach my children, or what I would teach anyone, is, as an individual, what can you and I do? As an individual, you and I can make sure that I treat people in the best way possible. That I treat people with compassion in a way that would be in accordance with how God would want me to treat people. Right? If I do that, then I've done my responsibility. And I can teach my children, I can teach my family to behave like that. And I've done my responsibility. When I'm at the dinner table, when I'm in social gatherings, and people are saying certain things about certain people, if I just stay quiet and let them say those things, that's a problem. I need to stand up for people, stand up for their rights wherever I am. That's how we solve these things. It happens at a family level, in interpersonal gatherings. That's really how we engage it. And I think that's something that all of us can do in our own ways in our lives. So I guess that's really good.
Muslim women historically do not have equal rights with Muslim men, and this is not an American value. Please discuss.
I'm going to take a moment to actually collect my thoughts before I start speaking. I think I'm going to share, while growing up, what it was like in my household. I grew up with 3 brothers, and I'm the only girl in the house. And my parents did not treat me any differently than they treated them. And I know what they're saying about women not having equal rights with men, but I don't believe that to be the case, because when Islam became a religion, women didn't have rights. Islam actually gave women rights. Islam gave women rights to own property, which did not exist at that time before that. In my household, my husband and I, we treat each other equally, financially, working in the home, raising the children in every respect. So I guess it's how you adopt, culturally, what you make of it. In my mind, women are not inferior to men at all. That's not what the religion is teaching. It's teaching that we are both equal, we just have different rights and different responsibilities. That answers
You know, one good tactic of losing a debate is to accept the premise of the question itself. Okay? In this country where women are paid 79% of the dollar, unlike Pakistan, unlike Bangladesh, unlike Turkey, unlike Indonesia, which are all Muslim countries, we have never had a woman head of state yet. This country is nearly 52% women, 48% men. Do you think we have 52 women in the US Senate? I like the US Senate with this 100 number. It helps fourth graders get the percentage. It's very difficult with the Congress at 435. It's a bit difficult. But with 100, how many women are there in this country? Do you know that 1 out of 3 women in this country are sexually molested? I once had a very interesting conversation with a congressman from Arkansas. And I told him that unless you think that American men are serial molesters, maybe 1/3 of the Congress is molesters, right? Unless there are serial molesters, and so there's a small body of men who molest. When you say 1/3 of women are molested, there are a lot of molesters going around in this country. It speaks very negatively about the moral ethos of our country. So one of the problems is that when we look at other societies and other cultures, the issues that we pick and choose to talk about have nothing to do with that other culture. It is more of the problems in our own culture. So this American fetish, literally it's a fetish, an obsession with the way women look, with the way women dress, etc., and the women's role, etc., makes them focus on these issues in part of the Muslim world. I'm not saying that Muslim women are well off or better off. Nobody is well off in the Muslim world, unfortunately. Neither the men have rights, nor the women have rights. There are hardly any democratic societies, etc. And I want to leave you with one more thought, and that is important. One way to judge this is to look at Muslims in the United States or in Europe, where they don't live in society where they are forced to follow certain norms, where they are free to choose and practice their faith. So among the religious part of the American Muslims, in the communities who are Muslims who are around the mosques, religious communities, if we focused on women who are successful in this world and in having a family, I bet you Muslim families are the best at it. Where women have professional careers and also do not have to sacrifice their families. This is Professor Princeton Anne Mary Slaughter. He wrote this book, Can Women Ever Have It All? It was a big debate a few years ago in Atlantic Monthly, if you want to read the short version. And after spending 2 years working for Hillary Clinton, who was the most women-friendly Secretary of State we ever had, she concluded that in today's America, women cannot have it all.
These two are on the same subject. How do you respond when Islamophobes use the command that a holy war is, I can't understand. Okay. How do we educate, this is the same thing, how do we educate non-Muslims about the complex nature of the Quran so they do not think it only tells Muslims to wage jihad? It's the same subject.
I think someone has been looking at the website. Tough question to ask Muslims. I hope there isn't a website like that. There are a couple of things. First of all, it's a very simple exercise to do this in the original age. There are about 6,600 plus verses in the Quran. And there are less than 30 that use any conjugation of the word jahada, which is to strive. In most cases, the word jahada means to struggle, or to strive, or to to exert yourself. For example, working hard is the same way as one who battles. The word in Arabic, the working hard, mujtahada, also comes from the same thing as mujahada from the Arabic root. So the conjugations are very similar. To do intellectual research, ijtihad also comes from the same root as to struggle. So the word really means struggle. Now there are two problems with what has happened in the West. For example, Israelis believe that if Palestinians did not read the Quran and if the word jihad was not in the Quran, do you think they would have happily accepted occupation? Do you think that the Iraqis would not resist US invasion of Iraq if the word jihad didn't exist in the Quran? No. What you have to understand is that there are geopolitical reasons why these things happen. There are geopolitical reasons why there is chaos in Syria and there is no chaos in Malaysia. Both Malaysians and Iraqis read the same Quran. So that is the important part. It's like the whole idea is that Muslims are doing these crazy things. It is because of the religion. It is not because of what we are doing to them first. That is what this whole argument is about. It is like saying that the only reason why America goes to war is because of certain things in the Bible. Okay. I would be happy to compare the Bible to the Quran. The Bible is genocidal. Kill everybody, including trees and plants, and leave nothing. I'm talking the First Testament of this, right? So what is important is, does that explain the Israeli occupation of Palestinians? Really not. It's a geopolitical issue. Maybe those values may be used to recruit one person here or another person there, but there are other ways too. For example, the Palestinian cause. The PLO was never Islamic. They used Marxist ideologies to oppose. It's only to decline. I mean, Muslims have tried to replace the Soviet Union with the Quran. And that's what happened, right? Once the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was no other resource to fight Western imperialism in these countries, so they became more Islamist to recruit more help. It's a rational strategy for the Palestinians. If they project themselves as Arabs, they have support only from 22 countries. If they project themselves as Muslims, they will get help from 55 countries. Someday, they'll become smart and project themselves as humans, and they'll get the world help from everybody. So that is what it is. The word jihad, I have to read the Quran. You don't see me going crazy. Thank you.
You have also made the point that jihad, the first jihad is jihad on yourself. Yes.
I just quickly want to add a couple of examples that I thought of when the word jihad came and, how I started reading the Quran, and I'm only about 20% done. I used to be able to, eat any kind of meat, and it was fine. I started reading the Quran, and it talks about how halal is the word that we use. The animal has to be slaughtered a certain way, and that's the most humane way of slaughtering an animal. So since I read that, I'm not able to eat regular meat because I'm thinking of the animal, how it was sacrificed. Before, if a fly came in the house, you just grab a fly swatter and, life is good. I can no longer do that. I think about the fly because it's a living thing, and, God is telling us to take care of it. So that's, it's not the same Quran I guess they're reading, really.
These will be the last two questions. Isn't Islamophobia just dehumanizing the other in order to absolve Americans of their guilt in destroying the Middle East? Is that the march? Skip that one.
Hello. So the question was, if I remember, was is Islamophobia just a way to, absolve basically get rid of the guilt from doing terrible things in the Middle East? And I'm probably going to say no to that. While the United States has done some pretty not very good things in the Middle East, Islamophobia is really, well, first of all, Islamophobia is way older than anything the United States has done in the Middle East. Islamophobia has existed since the Crusades, since the invasions in Anatolia, since the Cold War. It's not just unique to the United States. Just in this era, again, replacing the Soviet Union with the Quran, it's just convenient. Another thing is that, while the United States has done some pretty terrible things in the Middle East, I'm going to give an example of one of them, which should try and explain specifically why one instance of Islamophobia happened. This is what happened in 1979. If you know, it's when the American embassy was taken over in Iran. So, but instead of talking about 1979, I'm talking about a different year, 1953. So, after World War II, Persia, the country of Iran, it exited the sphere of influence of the Soviet Union and the British government, and it basically elected a proper democracy. There was a prime minister, a parliament, and the prime minister was a man named Mohammad Mossadegh. And in Persia at the time, there was a company called the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, which had a monopoly over all the oil production in Iran. And, well, it was terrible. They mistreated their workers, and they basically took Iran's natural resources and sold them. So Mohammad Mossadegh didn't like that, so he decided to nationalize the oil company. That had a big problem because suddenly Britain and the United States would lose a lot of the money they could get off of the oil in Persia. So the CIA, testing out its young muscles, launched a massive coup in Persia and replaced the democratically elected prime minister with the Shah of Persia, a monarch. In fact, the CIA even trained the Shah's personal police. I don't remember what they're called specifically, but they were eventually used to do terrible things to people. So that is probably why the Persians did not like the United States when he came in and destroyed their happy democracy and replaced it with a totalitarian Shah. That's why they were chanting "Death to America" in 1979 when the revolution happened. It's all a reaction to our mistakes we made in the Cold War. A funny story, the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company is now what we call BP. I'm sure they've been doing great things now. So, in some ways, Islamophobia is a reaction to our mistakes we've made in the Middle East. Because it's easy to say, oh, the Muslims just randomly captured some of our hostages in the embassy. They're so terrible. But it really is more of a series of unfortunate events that it just so happens that in this time period we don't like Muslims because of our actions. But it should be noted that Islamophobia is older than the United States. But in this iteration of Islamophobia, then yes, you could argue that it is a result of American mistakes in the Middle East.
All right, for the last question, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to answer this in 30 seconds. What are you most proud of as a Muslim?
I guess I'm proud. I'm just thankful, Like, I'm just thankful for all the blessings that God has given me. Like, I'm in my first year in med school, and we take an anatomy class. So we dissect cadavers. So day in and day out, we go into this cold room that reeks of formaldehyde, and we cut open dead bodies. And it's really unnerving, and it really makes you reflect. Like, you see these people that have already died, and they've given their lives so that you can learn how to be a doctor, so you can help other people. And it's just crazy to think about, as I go through my life, as I go through my daily interactions, I don't think about the fact that I'm going to die. In a sense, there's this subconscious idea that I'm just going to live forever. I can eat and drink and have fun and do all these things. I don't need to worry about what's going to happen after I die. But then I go into this room every day and I see these bodies, and I have to respect it and really wonder at how crazy it is that our lives are so short. And, that just makes me thankful for all the blessings that I've been given. I think that's what I'm most proud of as a Muslim, is just the sense of being thankful to God.
I would actually actually have to agree with Saad. I'm also very thankful for all the opportunities that God has given me. I'm proud to have gotten the guidance and the help when I did at the time it came to me. I'm proud of that, and I'm very thankful that God created me as an optimistic type. I'm always like the glasses half full kind of person, and I'm very proud to be a person like that.
Do you know why they call it the Islamic Golden Age, not the Arab Golden Age, or the African Golden Age, or the Persian Golden Age? It's because the scientists, while they were Africans, or Persians, or Arabs, they all had one thing that made them common. The reason it is a Golden Age, the unifying factor, it was the fact that they were Muslim. So in many ways, the fact that a religion could have connected people from different continents, different cultures, different regions, different languages, and brought them together, that makes me a proud Muslim. Because Islam is one of the most diverse religions out there, and has unified people and made their lives so much better in many ways.
Wow, after that I wanted to say that because I was a Muslim son. This is a tricky question. Do we answer why we are proud to be the servants of God, or why we are proud to be part of one way of serving that God, which is Islam? Okay, so I'm going to take the second shot. I'm sure all good Christians here know the answer to the first. Why we are all servants of God. The most mysterious question, the biggest mystery of existence is why existence? And why did God bother to make all of these things? You know, for example, a Sufi once told me, why did he open this shop? He used the word. Why did he open this shop? So philosophers have engaged this question. What is the purpose of life? What is the purpose of existence? Not just of our individual existence, but the existence of this entire creation. And I found the best answer in a tradition in Muslim. And the answer that appeals to me and resonates with me is this. It says, according to the tradition, God was a hidden treasure. He wanted to be known. He wanted to be loved. And therefore, he created his entire universe and populated it with sentient beings who would then know him and love him. And that answer appeals to me. And that is why I'm a Muslim. That answer also tells me why this world exists. This world is God's self-discovery. The entire universe that exists is because God is knowing himself. And he knows himself from people like us because we learn to know him. Thank you. I want you all to give a special hand to Jew. I also want to thank two of my partners, Naveed, he's somewhere here, Naveed, and Jamil, who are the co-founders of the Delaware Council. And with their help, we hope to do many such events in Delaware. And we want your support. If you want to have such an event at your church, at your school, at your institution, we will be happy to come, and we will bring in more of our members of the community too. But I think this is a wonderful, it's events like this that make America great.
Before we adjourn, two things. As I said, you're all welcome. Please come to Klein Hall. It's right around the corner in the hallway for refreshments, and we get a chance to talk to our wonderful panelists and the other people that are here. Mingle. Don't talk to anybody that you know. Talk to people you don't know. And Jamal wants to, well, first let me say, if anybody wants to continue this, find out what we can do, as Professor Khan mentioned, see me, I'm supposed to say, see me afterwards. Give me a card with your name and email address on, or maybe we can get a paper out on the table in the hall for you to sign so that we can get in touch with you and start a dialogue with these wonderful, wonderful panelists and all the Muslims in our community. Let's give them all another hand. Jamal wants to make a quick announcement. Brother Lamont, are you here? Okay.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all. June, one of these days you're going to remember the difference between Jamal, which is the beauty, and Jamil, which is beautiful. June and I coordinate two different groups as well, and one of them is the Palestinian Children Relief Fund. And I would like to bring to your attention one important event that's taking place on April 17th. We're in the process of building two cancer clinics, one in Gaza and one in outside Bethlehem. And we would invite everybody here, and of course you'll get more details later on about the event itself. It's a cultural event, it's a fundraising, and when you get those emails from me or June or Nora, you'll find out things that, if possible, and will be possible by your help and other people's help. You asked the question, why are we proud to be a Muslim? I think we should be asking the question is, how can we be proud to be a human being? Human beings are really loving each other for no matter who they are and helping each other in time of need. And Palestinians today, along with Syrians, a lot of people out there need your help and our help. We have been blessed. There's too many things. We can't complain. So I would appreciate if you come in and join us for a cultural night. Great food, I promise. Because I think, Nora, I'm in charge of food, right? Great food, great cultural, but at the same time, don't come to see us without a check. Thank you very much.
Close with two prayers before you all run out. Brother Lamont, would you come up? Brother Lamont X, Director of Wilmington Peacekeepers and an originating member of MCP and a dear friend of mine. And the Reverend Patty Downing, Rector of Trinity Episcopal Parish and part of the Movement for a Culture of Peace, will lead us in prayer. His Brother Lamont will start with you. You could come up here so they can hear you better. And if everybody would stand and join hands, hold hands together, go across the aisle so that there's a complete line of holding hands.
I'm humbled to be before you today. And thank you, June, for this opportunity. I want to say, June, she's a unifier. First met June, she said, Brother Lamont, you think I can help out on the street what the peacekeepers are doing? Because I'm a Caucasian. And I said, June, if you like to promote peace and unity, we don't care what color you are. So she's just a soldier. So I just want to say, our minister told us that if your mother told you that 5 and 2 was 7, and my mother told me that 6 and 1 was 7, and somebody else's mother told them that 3 and 4 was 7, and somebody else's mother told them that 7 and 0 was 7, what difference does it make how you got there? I'm just going to give you a prayer in the channel of Islam. The minister told us that a good Christian is a good Muslim, and a good Muslim is a good Christian. Okay, so I'm going to pray in the manner that I've been taught. Okay? Bismillah Rahman Rahim. All that means is in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praises are due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful.
Master of this great day of judgment in which we now live. Thee alone do we serve, thee alone do we beseech for aid. O Allah, guide us on the straight path, the path of those whom thou hast bestowed favor, and not the path of those whose wrath has been brought down. And O Allah, we beseech your help, and we beseech your mercy, for we believe in you and trust in you and depend on you for all that we need. We are workers in your cause with your apostle. Please grant us success. Amen.
God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, God of Jesus and Mary, God of the prophet, peace be upon him. When you created this earth, you called us very good. When you entrusted it to our care, you promised to be with us always, to the end of the ages. Help us as your children to look into the eyes of other and see your love reflected back at us. Help us to be your hands and heart and voice in this world, uniting us one to another, rising up in us a level of dignity and honor and blessing for all of your children of this earth. And give us strong hearts to persevere when the times are hard. And most of all, send your blessing upon us this day and all the days of our lives. Amen.
Thank you.